What's up, YouTube? Coming back with my 5th video on this channel. Today we are going to be talking about buys for rebuilding teams and then buys for contending teams. Now, I first wanted to talk a little bit more about my strategy when it comes to rebuilding teams and also contending teams. If you're a rebuilding team, you want to get as young as assets as possible. The thing that what I mean by that is you want to be getting those young, talented stud receivers, young, talented running backs, the quarterback that's going to fit into that time frame, especially if you're playing Superflex, as well as getting those young and up-and-coming tight ends. So I'm going to be giving you a few options that are on the cheap that potentially could help you accelerate that value and help you improve that rebuilding team. If I'm contending, this is the thing. I want to be all in. I don't want to be on the fringe of the playoffs. I don't want to be in that 5 to 8 range for my draft pick. I want to be either the top 3 to 4, or I want to be at the back half if I am competing. My first buy for a rebuilder is going to be Brandin Aiyuk. I know what you're thinking. Brandin Cooks had an absolute terrible year last year, and I agree with you. Wide receiver 29 on a points per game basis. We do have to remember, though, he did get into the doghouse with Kyle Shanahan, where he, like the first 4 weeks of the season, he was not even on the field. For those of us that did have Brandin Cooks on our redraft teams or even on our dynasty teams, that was super frustrating because, of course, his rookie season back in 2019 averaged 15.4 fantasy points per game, which put him as the wide receiver 18 on a points per game basis, which was incredible. Had all the hype going into the offseason. Everyone was saying buy Brandin Cooks because we did not see the Deebo Samuel emergence that ended up happening. I think as we look into this year, the big thing with Brandin Cooks, even though he is the third receiving option behind Deebo Samuel and George Kittle, and of course has the new quarterback with Trey Lance, I think we do have to remember one thing, and it is that Deebo Samuel and George Kittle have not been able to prove to us yet that they've been able to stay on the field for a full season of NFL work. And based on that, I am highly interested in buying Brandin Cooks, who will then, whenever someone does get injured, be the wide receiver 2 or the second receiving option on the team. And I think Brandin Cooks has all the tools and abilities to be able to get there. He is only 24 years old, so he fits perfect into that rebuilding model. We want those young receivers that are going to help us get young, as well as just be there in the future. My second buy for a rebuilding team is going to be A.J. Dillon. Now, I know what you're saying. A.J. Dillon, isn't he like 24 years old? Isn't he the backup running back in Green Bay? Hear all you on that one. He is. But last year, even though he was the backup, put up 10.9 fantasy points per game, which was a running back 29 on a points per game basis. What did Green Bay do this offseason? They absolutely demolished their wide receiver core, got rid of Devontae Adams, got rid of MVS, Allen Lazard, signed Sammy Watkins, expect Robert Tonyan to be back. The best options for the Packers in the offense is going to be Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. And what's the thing with Aaron Jones? He is about to turn 27 years old. He is getting up there in age, as well as his contract is coming to an end. The thing with A.J. Dillon is when we're buying these running backs that are backups or in a committee, we have to think about what's their value going to be a year from now. There is a high probability that A.J. Dillon potentially could be the starting running back, quote-unquote bell cow running back in Green Bay heading into 2023, which would put his value at a mid to late first. I think right now you could buy A.J. Dillon for an early second. And the thing is you're buying him with all the risk baked in that he never actually beats out Aaron Jones for a starting job, and he's always the backup. And the next offseason, there's going to be the same exact hype that happens every offseason with A.J. Dillon. Those quad pictures end up get posted, and everyone gets hyped on him, and you could sell him for a future second and get your whole value back, even if nothing happens for you as a rebuilder. And that's the type of asset that I like, someone that I can liquidate pretty quickly, as well as potentially has that boom upside to really help take my fantasy team to the next level when I am rebuilding. My third buy for a rebuilding team is going to be David Njoku. David Njoku has done absolutely nothing in his NFL career up from 2017 to 2021. So he's been in the NFL for 5 seasons, done absolutely nothing. But the thing that we have to remember about David Njoku was first round talent, came out of the University of Miami, compares very comparable to Travis Kelce, 6'4", 246. I don't know what to say besides the fact that dude's a super athletic tight end that is now getting the best quarterback of his career, and Deshaun Watson to be his quarterback. The thing that we have to remember before, he was competing with targets with Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham, Baker was there. They had Austin Hooper, signed him to a big deal from the Atlanta Falcons. I don't know what exactly to think about David Njoku other than the fact that he's a super athletic tight end. Those are the type of tight ends we want. He's got a great quarterback, so we just hope it works out. Plus, he got that huge extension, which signals that they want to get him the ball. They want him a part of their future plans. And so David Njoku right now is going off as the tight end 17 on Keep Trade Cut. If we can get him for tight end 12, tight end 13 prices, I think that's killer, especially considering the fact that he has a future and some of the tight end options are either older or don't have that same upside that David Njoku is going to be able to have. My first buy for a contending team is going to be Derrick Henry. Now, I know what you're saying. Isn't Derrick Henry like prehistoric? Isn't he like 28 years old, about to turn 29? I hear on all that. He is also coming off a pretty major injury. Now, granted, we all saw the workout videos on Twitter. We do know that the dude is an absolute animal. I think the thing with Derrick Henry we have to remember is it's hard to put some of these running backs. Of course, the 27-year age cliff that seems to happen for all dynasty running backs. There's some that make it out. Marshall Faulk made it out. Jerome Bettis, a lot of people don't realize Jerome Bettis was an absolute tank until like the age of 30. Emmitt Smith played till 32. Like, there's some running backs that are just built different. And I think Derrick Henry might potentially be a part of that. I don't necessarily know if he's going to play to the age of 32 or 33, but I do know that last year, even though he only played 8 games, he averaged 24.2 fantasy points per game, which put him as the RB2 on a points per game basis before he got injured, which was huge. The year before that, of course, had a monster year, 20.8 fantasy points per game, put him as the running back 3 on a points per game basis. Those are the type of stats that you want if you're competing to be able to win. And the thing is, with Derrick Henry and his age, you're going to be able to get him at a discount. I actually just traded for him in one of my dynasty leagues, traded George Kittle and a second for Derrick Henry. Now, I think that might have been a slight overpay. This league holds their running backs like it's nobody's business. But I will say, though, if you can get Derrick Henry and you can say, hey, you're competing, you're going for it all, and you just need an RB1, a high-end RB2 to be able to take you to the finish line, those are the types of moves I would be trying to make for Derrick Henry. You might be able to get him for Kareem Hunt in a second. Deals like that, those are the type of deals I would be trying to do for Derrick Henry. Not giving up the whole farm, but trying to give up maybe a running back that's a little bit younger but unproven and a second-round pick to try to get that upgrade to help you take you over the top. My second buy for dynasty contenders is going to be Brandin Cooks. Brandin Cooks, I don't know what to say. He's on everybody's bias list every year, and I feel like there's a fairly good reason for it, is because not enough people are hyped by Brandin Cooks, and he doesn't get the respect that he deserves compared to other wide receivers. If we look at what he has done so far in his career, last year, wide receiver 19 on a points per game basis, wide receiver 17 the year before that. He got hurt the year before that, so it's kind of hard. Wide receiver 67, but he did play 14 games, so we'll add that in. But then wide receiver 19, wide receiver 16, wide receiver 9 before that. Like, the dude is an absolute stud. The thing is that I think is ridiculous is, like, people are valuing Terry McLaurin, and I'm an Ohio State fan, over Brandin Cooks for dynasty and fantasy, even though Terry McLaurin hasn't put up any of these stats comparative to Brandin Cooks. Now, I know what you're saying. Isn't Brandin Cooks old? Didn't he have all those concussion issues? Yeah, I do hear you in that, but he is 28.7 years old, so he is going to be turning 29 this year, but he is that typical beta wide receiver where you could see him easily playing until the age of 31 or 32. You're only going to have to give up a mid-second to late second to get him, and you're getting these top 20 fantasy point finishes on a season-by-season basis, and you're only going to have to give up like a mid-second to late second. The thing with Brandin Cooks that I also always have to remember is the fact that, like, he's not your wide receiver 2. Like, if you get Brandin Cooks, he's probably your wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. I've seen him on teams as a wide receiver 5. Like, imagine if he's just sitting there on your bench, or like you throw him into your like second or third flex spot. That is insane value, and you're not going to be able to get that for anybody else that cheap. So I would continue to go out and try to buy Brandin Cooks. I usually see him as like a throw-in and filler on trades, but definitely Brandin Cooks, crazy value. Go get him. My third buy for dynasty contenders is going to be James Conner. Kind of mentioned it before. If you're a contender, like, the big thing for you as a contender, you've probably built up a solid wide receiver core. You got solid running backs, but the thing is, you're going to have to shore up that running back depth, because if you just go hero RB on a dynasty team, it's kind of hard to maybe make it out of the season compared to like if you're doing a best ball where you just draft one solid running back. But you're going to need 2 to 3 running backs that are going to be able to take you to that finish line that are studs. And this guy is a stud, but he's not costing you a stud because of a few things. So my third buy for contenders is going to be James Conner. James Conner, of course, 27 years old. So he's at that age cliff, and he's playing for the Arizona Cardinals. Had an absolute monster season last year. Of course, 18 touchdowns, RB7 on the year on his points per game basis. The thing that's crazy about what he did last year, though, is he's not necessarily known for being a pass-catching running back, but he did catch 37 balls for 375 yards. We look at into this year. What do they do this year? They get rid of Chase Edmonds, bring in Darrell Williams. I'm a huge Darrell Williams fan, and I think, especially for redraft purposes, he is a very great late stash, late dart throw, killed it with the Kansas City Chiefs. But I don't think there's any reason to think Darrell Williams is just going to come in and take some of the workload off of James Conner. No way, Jose. Kyler Murray is still going to get some of the goal line carries with the read option. But what did they do this offseason? They added Marquise Brown to help spread the field. DeAndre Hopkins will be back after 6 games. They still have Zach Ertz, who was killing it at the end of last year. It's all signs point toward James Conner being another top 12 running back this year on a season-long basis. And if that is what you're looking for, you're going for it all this year. That's what you're doing if you're competitive. You only have to trade like an early second-round pick, maybe a lower-end running back, lower-end wide receiver plus a second to get James Conner if you're buying him from a rebuilding team. I think a lot of people are getting wary of the injury history as well as the age. So this is the year. He might only make it one more year for you. I know he did get that 2-year extension, so maybe it ends up being 2 solid years of production. But like we said, with these older running backs, you can only go on a year-by-year basis. And James Conner is someone that I'm trying to buy everywhere, especially if you're considering the fact of this production. And if he can be your running back 2, that's awesome. But even better if he's your running back 3 and you're just plugging in him, and he can just be that extra depth piece that gets you to the finish line. Thanks so much for stopping by today. Like I said, on Monday, we are going to be talking a little bit more about my Dynasty rankings for quarterbacks. It'll be a little bit more straightforward. We'll dive into tight end rankings as well as some more buys and sells next week. So thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll catch you on the flip side.